There are tons of stories out there about hacked Pokemon games. Some of them are quite neat, such as the one you could catch a version where you can catch a ghost as a starter. Some are ridiculous, silly stories about individuals dying after playing the game, or the game speaking to them. God, don't these writers know less when it comes to these stories? Well, I digress. I grew interested in these hacked games that are apparently from in any thrift store, on eBay, or handed out by homeless people to random passerbys. I didn't have the pleasure of meeting these creepy people, though. I merely found these particular cartridge in trash bins when the garbage truck backed into my neighbor's dumpster. I noticed the game and I asked the trash man if I could take it, and he didn't seem to mind. It was thrown away after all. I, of course, checked out with my neighbor to confirm that they actually didn't want it, and they seemed perplexed, as if they never seen it in their life before. Their son made a grab for it, the little boy who saw the Charizard in the front cover crying out, "Pokemon, I want, Mummy!" But his mother told him no. Seeing as I found it, he didn't have a Game Boy anyway, he just liked Pokemon. Thinking nothing more, I simply went home. Looking at the cartridge's sticker on the way, it was just a plain old red version with just a sticker slightly torn across the Charizard's neck. But what was expected with such an old game? I had the blue version as a kid, so I was a bit eager to see this subliminal differences in red version had. I was rather disappointed when I saw the title screen showed up. Pokemon Strangled Red version. Well, damn it, it was a hack. Hacks are all neat and all, but they had zero monetary value. The original is quite valuable by now, and I wanted to play Red anyway, not this crap. Oh well, it was free, might as well try it. The game was odd, however Strangled Red? That made no sense. Not even the morbid description of someone being asphyxiated, as some people turn blue when choking, not red. Who knows? Maybe there was a pair of these hacks and I just got the red one. The more I thought about this though, the more interested I became. My initial disappointment turned into curiosity. I wanted to know what the creator made, and I was going to note everything I saw. The first oddity I noticed when the start screen had was a Charizard right next to the trainer instead of a Charmander. Also, the Pokemon never cycled through like the original versions did. It just stayed Charizard. Even after 5 minutes of waiting, shrugging, I just hit start, noticing that there was no Charizard cry as it did, like there was supposed to be. I saw that there was a continue option, so I figured what I do what everyone else did with used games, just to see what the previous owner had done. No. Blinked in surprise. No? What do you mean no? The game wouldn't let me continue no matter what I did for the fourth attempt. I heard the Charizard cry, quiet and barely audible, but there was shrugging it off. I decided to hit new game. I would like to see what I have done after checking the old file anyway. The screen cut to black for a while. No Professor Oak, no starting theme, just nothing at all. Eventually the screen came back, showing a bedroom, 2 beds and 2 TVs, and a computer in the corner. My trainer sprite was the usual one, consistent with the original red one. I was curious as to why it didn't ask my name, although it was answered as I opened the pause menu. Noticing my trainer's name was Steven. No, it isn't my real name or some stupid crap like that. This game itself isn't aware or haunted, at least not that I know of. I just have chosen the name already. Curious, I saw that he had a starter amount of money and no badges. He didn't look exactly red though, as his hair was longer, almost reaching halfway down his back. Red's usual smile was replaced with a confident smirk. Honestly, I found this sprite much cooler than Red. Next I checked out his Pokemon, a single Charmander level 5 named Mickey. Nothing was odd about it, or should I say her, with their name at all. She had a beginning Charmander stats, only knew Scratch and Tail Whip and basic stuff. The game seemed relatively normal. Returning to the game, I walked about around the room, noticing Stevens' long hair was present for the back of the trainer sprite. When my back was turned to the camera, I didn't recognize the house, but I descended down the stairs to see more. Downstairs was another trainer who spoke up to me in the instant I came down. Mike, ready yet? Steven, yeah? I assumed this Mike was my rival, pre-decided for me, replacement of Blue most likely. I thought back to the bedroom of having two beds, realizing that they weren't just rivals. They were brothers. They talked back and forth like basic Pokemon dialogue, and became a Pokemon master, catch them all, stuff like that, before having a little argument which is better, Charmander or Squirtle, which of course led to the introduction battle, like the one in versus Blue in the lab. Simple enough, scratch, tackle, until I won purely for having the first turn. I took a note of how much better Steven's sprite looked in combat than Red's, in a different pose, his hair looking like it was blowing in the wind. A brief minor upgrade, still much nicer. I left the house after some banter with my brother. Stepping out of Pallet Town theme was going to the east. I found it was indeed Pallet Town. The house was simply on the outskirts to the west. I noted that there was my mysterious grassy field like a normal Pallet Town wandering about. I decided to go check in on Red's home. His mother was inside, and when I talked to her, she commented on how handsome Steven looked, and hoping her son would look up to him as a role model for when he became a Pokemon trainer himself next year. Which of course led me to realize that this took place a year before the original Pokemon. Red was even upstairs, playing on the SNES in his room, commenting, "I'm going to be the best too when it's my turn." I was starting to like this hack. It was interesting, a completely new adventure, a different character. Hell, Steven seemed to have a history with the people in town, a reputation, a personality beyond silent protagonist, and the people in the town talked to him as a person, making the conversation not just spouting up tutorial crap. Even Blue's sister had a new dialogue. She and Steven seemed to be in a relationship too, as the dialogue ended with a kiss and a heart over her head. Professor Oak simply wished me well, giving me a Pokedex to aid in my adventure. He wasn't giving it to me just out of reason behind the adventure, like any other Pokemon games out there. He gave it to me out of kindness. Something to help me out on the way. A gift. I was liking this more and more with each sound. The game seemed to have an actual story now. I was somebody, not just some cookie-cutter protagonist anyone could be. Not just some blank sheet that could be replaced without notice. The story was also different, although the actual gameplay remained unchanged. I went north like I was supposed to, went from town to town, collected badges, received the praise of all the leaders. Steven's fame even seemed to spread as more NPCs would talk to me like they knew him. I used Mickey for every battle, and she was growing surprisingly fast. She handled Brock with ease and pounded Misty with no trouble at all. She wasn't adversely affected by the super effective attacks as others, did more damage than a regular Charmander. She was a veritable powerhouse. She even became the level of Charizard at the mere level of 25. Not bad, I must say. Things started to get weird though. As soon as I reached Lavender Town, I know, Lavender Town is the focus behind every creepy story, but this was the only place that was noticeably different. There was no Team Rocket invasion, to which I found odd, although I do remember this was the year in the past, so the invasion wouldn't occur till Red's time. I tried to enter Pokemon Tower, aiming to get a Ghastly, but that's when it got odd. Steven, I have no reason to be here. Steven wouldn't go in the Pokemon Tower no matter what I did. This was weird. I mean, hell, there are a million of places in Kanto you don't really need to be. Little random houses with nothing but children NPCs, for an example. Why was it here that Steven wouldn't enter? With a shrug, I figured that I wouldn't need a Ghastly, seeing as Mickey could handle anything. So I simply went on way to Lavender Town, serving no purpose other than a passageway to the Pokemon Center. The game progressed normally from there. The remaining gyms fell, and eventually I made my way to the Elite Four and defeated them. As with Blue, my brother, Mike was there before me, initiating the championship battle, which Mickey swept with ease. The aftermath of the battle was quite pleasant. None of the tension of what was present between red and blue at the end of their match. The little brothers congratulated each other on their progress and shook hands. Before the screen went white, no Hall of Fame or any credits. When the screen came back, it was at the house again. The two brothers were sitting at the computer, conversing with each other. Steven, I don't want to. Mike, come on. I just gotta borrow her just to finish the Pokedex. The entry won't register unless she recognizes me as a master for just a second. Steven, but she's my Mickey. Mike, I promise I'll give her back. Come on, please. Yes, no. I was a bit perplexed, so I hit no just to be cautious. Mike, come on, please. No. Come on, please. I realized that this would just continue to loop until I hit yes, so I did just to see what would happen. Mike, alright, this will take a sec, then we'll both be Pokemon Masters. Steven. He was quiet, so the screen changed to the animation shown on the two people to trade Pokemon, which I found a bit odd, seeing that I was solo, but whatever. This was apparently used to happen. Mickey went first. I watched lazily as she began to travel the trading tube. Snap! That made me jump. The sudden noise resonated in my silent bedroom, loud due to the volume being way up. Looking at the screen, I noticed the game kit seemed to freeze. Mickey was still in mid-trade, but the game wasn't doing anything. With a sigh, I just turned off the game, wondering when my last save was. When the game turned back on, I stared for a moment to start the screen. There was no Charizard next to the trainer. Upon pressing start, I noticed that the new game option was absent, only leaving continue. This was strange to say the least, so I selected it. The game started without showing any of my stats as usual. My jaw dropped of what I was greeted with. 1 year later. The Lavender Town theme came on first, playing its normal way, the screen slowly fading in from the blackness. Steven was in the Pokemon Tower, which made the music even stranger. Seeing that the tower has its own theme, he was standing in front of a tombstone, not doing anything. Wondering what was going on, I pressed A. Steven was silent. Confused, I tried walking, realizing I was indeed in control at the moment. I brought up the pause menu and checked my party. Mickey was gone. Not just Mickey, but all my Pokemon. He had nothing. The Pokedex was absent from the menu, and his bag was empty. Honestly, I'm concerned now. I checked his trainer card. He had no money, he had no badges. His playtime was about 8,795 hours, which was impossible as I only had 30 logged in before. But it wasn't the strangest part. His picture. The picture was handsome. Confident young trainer was different. His eyes were blank. His face slowly turned slightly down. That smirk of his was gone, replaced by any lack of expression at all. The long hair of his was in perfect perm, was now messy and unkempt. I couldn't look away from him anymore. Closing the menu, I went to move out of the tower, but with every step I took away from the tombstone, the screen flickered, like a Pokemon did if it was poisoned. Gulping, I brought up the trainer card again. His picture was getting worse. Every step I took, he hung his head more and more. His shoulders slumped and was bent over. By the time I had exited out of the tower, he was on his knees, hands to his face, hair draped across him. I guess you already knew what was going on, but this clenched it, and I began to put some things together in my mind. I had always wondered why there was no champion in the original game besides your rival. Why is it you, the protagonist, had to beat your own rival when he just waltzed in? No previous champion to challenge. Then it struck me. The answer was right there. The precious champion gave up. His precious Mickey was apparently dead, and with her, so died a part of him. His Pokedex and his other Pokemon, his badges, his fame, all of it, he threw it away. In that year that I missed, the year was all those hours came from. I even did the math. There is 8,765 hours in a year. Add to the 30 from before and it matched up. Even so, the game kept going. This should have been an ending, I thought. I mean, what else is there to do? I had no Pokedex, no Pokemon, not anything. What was I supposed to be doing? I talked to everyone in the town, but they all said the same things. Are you okay? Still mourning, RC. Everything will be alright. Please, is there anything we can do? Steven was never replied to them. They all just simply said the same things over and over again. I couldn't put the game down now. This was all strange. Curious, I headed off in the tall grass and eventually got into battle with a Rattata. No Pokemon was sent out, just Steven's sprite. I was wondering how I'd battle. While Rattata left you be, the battle ended without anything happening. This was certainly interesting. With every Pokemon I've encountered, Wild Pidgey ignored you, while Ponyta wandered off. The music never changed any either. No matter where I went, Lavender Town came from the speakers, following me. Sometimes slowed down slightly, sometimes not. I searched everywhere, every town, talked to everybody, wondering just what the hell I needed to do. My frustration was mixing with depressing atmosphere in this, making the experience altogether unnerving and uncomfortable. I couldn't hear myself away. I was starting to get a bit angry though. Nobody telling me to do anything besides giving their condolences or trying to give me items like lemonade or coffee met each other with Steven. No. I slapped myself for the odyssey, suddenly realizing that my answer was right in front of me. Pallet Town, of course. I went through there, which took a long time having to walk. No Pokemon to fly with, no bicycle to ride, and Steven only seemed to move half the regular movement speed. It wasn't much different as I first tried talking to Professor Oak. These things happen. You were just unlucky. Next I tried Blue's sister. Please, don't leave home again. Red's mom wouldn't even talk to me at all. With nowhere else in mind to go, I walked to the west, finding the house from the beginning, which I had never entered since leaving Pallet Town. Inside was Mike, but talking to him was just as useless. Mike, I'm so sorry. I pondered for a moment if this was really the ending. Steven doomed to do nothing but roam Kanto in misery, haunted by the memories, forced to listen to everyone's concerns about him. As a last-ditch effort to do anything, I went to the bedroom and walked over to the bed. Steven, I'm going to sleep. The screen then faded to black for a moment, but then slowly faded back in, the world having a black tint to it. Mike's sprite was laying on the other side of the bed. I assumed this meant it was night. Steven, I'm going to do it. Do what, again? I had no idea. Tried inspecting everything in the room, but nothing happened. As soon as I left the house, another dialogue. Steven, it can bring her back. It can do anything. What in the hell was it? Something that could do anything? I couldn't for the life of me figure it out. Wandering about, I tried to leave Pallet Town the usual way. Not that way, Steven said. He wouldn't go any further. I tried the homes. Steven, screw them! I quirked my eyebrow at that, forgetting the moment that this was not a real Pokemon game. The vulgarity just took me off guard. I looked around, but there was nowhere I could go, until I accidentally stepped on an ocean, and Steven walked right in, only the upper half of his sprite visible, like the swimmers you encountered in the Cerulean City gym. I didn't know he could swim. Steven, the missing one. Missing one? I paused for a moment. No, he couldn't possibly mean that. I hadn't tried the missing note trick on this hack yet, but it just fit too well. That it had to be what it meant. I surfed all the way towards Cinnabar Island. I began to feel something was off, more so than this already was. Silence. The Lavender Town theme had stopped and there was no noise at all, nor were any Pokemon. I just kept going, finding the Cinnabar and surfing up and down the east coast. Lo and behold, Wild Missing Known appeared. Steven, mine. Wild Missing Known was caught. What the hell? Steven didn't do anything. He just commanded that atrocity of the broken data to join him. No become his possession, and it did. I was beginning to get more and more disturbed by this. Checking the start menu, I saw a missing note was not in my party, but instead of an item. Making things even stranger, I checked the trainer card as well. Steven had his back to me, his long hair draped behind him, his hands in his pockets, nothing else. Remembering what he said at the start of the night, I realized what I had to do. I surfed to land and made my way to Northeast, where Lavender Town is. Along the way, I had noticed the trainers. Honestly, oddly still out at this hour. It wouldn't look at Steven. All of them kept turning around when he passed, even those that were normally static. I tried talking to one of the officers at the guard on the house in these buildings. Just go. They all said the same thing, although chills went down my spine. Sometimes dead is best. My hands were sweating beyond this point. Steven was about to do the impossible. Something some would see as a crime against nature, which as many of these people shared that opinion. I steeled myself, it's just a game, and I knew I was going to complete it. It took the eternity to reach the Pokemon Tower. I got there by eventually, taking a deep breath and heading towards a tombstone. I remember the first image of Steven standing, and it was burned into my mind after all. First I tried inspecting it. Steven. Mickey. Nothing happened with a gulp. I opened up the menu and select the missing note from the bag. Oak. Steven. Don't use it. I was reminded of Professor Oak would magically tell you that you couldn't use a key item somewhere, like using a bicycle in the building. Although this message was different. Even worse, Steven responded to it. Steven. In a world that changed me? Why should I play fair? Steven used it. Steven obtained... What in God's name did he obtain? I couldn't tell you because the game took away my control. Without my input, Steven began to leave the tower on his own, walking every single step. The Lavender Town theme started again as he left the tower and began his excruciating slow journey against my will. Every time he crossed one of the borders, the music would change. It got progressively slower, more than disturbing, and more by the minute. By the time he reached Cerulean City, it was a demonic rumbling. I just stared, watching him, trying to guess where he was going, but it was getting more and more obvious. He was heading to Pallet Town. The music had all had stopped, but when he got there, playing a single note by note, he went exactly to where I guessed it, right into his own home, inside and up the stairs. At this point, there was no music. Steven moved up step by step, stopping at his brother's bed, turning to face him. At first, I thought the game froze because he didn't do anything. Simply just stood there and I couldn't move him. I did, however, find out I could open up the pause menu. I was terrified to look, but I couldn't stop myself. I selected his trainer card and there was a low growl noise, like a distorted Pokemon cry. Steven was looking at me again, directly at the screen. He was hunched over, his bangs obscuring his face. His hair was wild and feathered out. Between his bangs, there wasn't even a face at all, just black with red eyes, looking straight forward. A white grin contrasting the darkness. It wasn't at all. His name was now... I couldn't look away. My eyes glued to this, not breaking contact for the time. My vision was getting blurry until I couldn't see very well. My face grew wet. I was crying like a baby. There was nothing I could do to hold back the tears. I was his boy from the start. I built him up into greatness, and then was forced to watch this decline after a tragic accident. And now he was this thing, this abomination. I watched him go insane, halting my tears. Wiping my eyes, I closed out of the trainer card and tried to save the game, just wanting to quit. The game informed me it was impossible. Nothing can be saved now. The pause menu just wouldn't close no matter what I did. So with no other option, I checked the bag. Nothing happened. I checked the Pokemon and there was one, a single sprite that left me. It had 0 HP. Its status, dead. Its name was... I selected it and it was greeted with 4 options. Status, It's her. Switch. Never. Close. No. Strangle. My fingers were shaking. I selected Strangle and the menu closed, showing Steven in the room again. Goodbye. Snap. The game shut itself off. I was more dumbfounded than frightened. In a bit of shock, I turned it back on. The title screen was showing the manic Steven with a horribly glitched Charizard. I pressed start and then continue. All I was zoomed out of the view of Pallet Town, showing Steven's home in the west, grouse surrounding it, and those unmovable stones blocking it from the rest of the town. The image was completely static. No music, no movement, before fading to white. Going back to the title screen it had been when I first popped in a trainer and a Charizard. I attempted to hit continue. No.